I stand before the old tower, and the air feels heavy.
The stones look alive under the grey sky of London, and for a moment, I feel they are watching me.
Inside the arches, I hear faint sounds. Maybe my mind plays tricks, but the more...
Each brick remembers a face, a scream, or a betrayal. Please remember me.
Each brick remembers a face, a scream, a betrayal.
This is not just history. It is fashion, written without ink.
I stand before the old tower, and the air feels heavy like it carries 1,000 stories. The stones look alive under the grey sky of London, and for a moment I feel they are watching me. People around walk fast. They take pictures. They laugh. But the tower stays still like a beast that has learned patience. This place does not speak. Yet its silence tells everything. I take a deep breath, and the air smells of rain and iron. They call it a monument of history. But when you stand close enough, you feel something deeper. It is not just a building, it is a memory carved in stone. Once it was the heart of power. Now it is a graveyard of forgotten voices. I touch the wall and it feels cold, even in summer, as if the blood of those who died here never really dried. Inside the arches I hear faint sounds, or maybe my mind plays tricks, the echo of chains, the whisper of prayers, the sigh of regret. I tell myself it is nothing, but the more I listen, the more I know the tower is alive. Not with life, but with remembrance. Each brick remembers a face, a scream, a betrayal. Standing here, I realize the Tower of Silence is not silent at all. It speaks through fear, through pain, through the weight of time. This is not just history. This is confession written, without ink, without mercy, and without end. When the first stone of this tower was laid, the year was 1078. The city was young and raw. William the Conqueror had won the land, but not the hearts of the people. He wanted something that would remind every soul who truly ruled. So he raised this great tower with hands that bled and eyes that feared no god, only the king. The walls rose higher each month, thick and cold, and the people stared at them with dread. They understood the message. This was not a home, this was a warning. It was built to stand over London like a crown made of stone, and shadow time passed and kings changed. But the tower stayed. Its shape grew, its purpose twisted. What began as protection turned into imprisonment. Secret chambers were dug beneath the floor, tunnels where screams could not escape sunlight. Never touch those walls. And that darkness began to grow like a disease. I walk through the outer yard and feel that same power still in the wind. This place was never meant to defend, it was meant to remind everyone of fear, and even after 1,000 years, that fear still breathes here. The tower that once guarded kings soon became the place where kings guarded their secrets. The prison was born, not for thieves, but for those who dared to speak against power. Every ruler needed silence, and the tower gave it. I follow the path prisoners once walked, narrow and dark. The stones beneath my feet smooth from endless footsteps. The air grows colder with each step, and I can almost feel the weight of invisible chains. The silence here is thicker than night. Inside these walls, truth was punished and lies were rewarded. Noblemen, poets, spies, priests. Anyone who questioned the crown found their end here. Some were tortured until their faith broke. Some vanished into cells so deep the sun forgot them. When I close my eyes, I can almost hear them, the clatter of keys, the drip of water, the slow breath of someone waiting for dawn that never came. Centuries have passed, but the tower remembers everything. Every confession, every cry, every final heartbeat. To stand here is to stand inside the mind of history. the place where power buried its guilt and called it order. The tower did not just hold prisoners, it held the soul of a kingdom that could not bear its own reflection. I stand near the chapel where a queen once walked. Her name still floats through the mist of history. Anne Boleyn, the woman who changed a kingdom and paid with her life. I can almost see her in my mind walking calmly down the narrow path, the sound of her light steps mixing with the breath of the wind, the guards around her afraid to meet her eyes because they knew what was coming. She was brought here not as royalty but as a prisoner betrayed. By her own crown she waited for judgment that was already written in stone. On that morning in May the sky was pale and still. They say she smiled before the sword fell. They say she whispered a prayer for mercy the moment the world turned silent. Look at the floor and wonder if she stood right here, if her shadow touched these walls when she took her final breath. They say her spirit never left the tower, that her headless figure walks at night across the courtyard, the same path she took. To her death, some guards refused to enter this area. After midnight, they spoke of faint lights of whispers carried by the wind. But I feel something else. I do not think she haunts this place out of revenge. I think she stays because her story never finished her. Truth was buried under fear and pride, and so her memory keeps walking through time, searching for peace that never came. I whisper her name, and for a second I feel the air change, softer, colder, like a sigh that crosses centuries. The queen without a crown still reigns here, but only in silence. There is another story that lives in the tower, the story of two children who vanished into its darkness. The princes Edward and Richard, sons of a dead king, brought here in the summer of 1483. They were told they would be safe. But safety is a word that dies quickly inside these walls. They were young. Their laughter once echoed through the rooms. Now the same walls echo only emptiness. The records say they disappeared one night. No bodies, no screams, just silence. Years later, two small skeletons were found buried beneath a staircase. The tower kept its secret, as it always does. When I stand near the bloody tower, I feel the air grow heavy. The stone feels warmer, as if touched by memory. Tourists walk by, they smile, they take pictures, but sometimes people stop suddenly, like they hear something soft. A voice, a giggle, a cry. No one wants to admit it, but the sound is real. The story of the princes is more than a mystery. It is a mirror of power and fear. Innocence swallowed by ambition. The uncle who wanted the crown erased their names but could not erase their memory. Some say the boys still watch from the windows, their faces pale and sad. I do not know if ghosts exist, but I know the past does not die. It hides and waits, and here it waits forever. Deep beneath the tower, there are rooms the sunlight never reaches. When I walk down the spiral stairs, the air becomes thick and still. The sound of my footsteps fades until I can hear only my own breath. This is where the tower spoke without words. This is where men were taught the meaning of silence. The rack, the Iron Maiden, the Scavengers, Daughter. These were the names of mercy, twisted into tools of pain. Bodies, stretched until bones cracked, screams buried under stone in time. But the worst torture was not pain. It was waiting, waiting in darkness, not knowing if dawn would ever come. Some prisoners carved their names into the walls, the letters still faint. Under my hand, each mark a small rebellion against oblivion, a way to say I existed, I mattered, I suffered. The tower tried to erase them, but the walls remembered. Even now at night, people say they hear sounds down here, not cries but murmurs, like unfinished prayers drifting through the air. Maybe it is imagination, maybe it is history breathing. I stand still and listen, and for a moment I hear it too. A voice, soft and broken, saying, "Please remember me." In these chambers I understand the truth. The tower never killed with swords, it killed with silence, and that silence still lives in every corner, waiting for someone to hear. Night comes slowly over the tower, and the city outside begins to fade. The sounds of London turn soft like a faraway memory inside these walls. Darkness feels different. It moves. It breathes the air. Itself seems older. I walk through the courtyard and see shadows stretch across the stones. They look like figures waiting, watching. The guards who once served here spoke of strange things, they said. Footsteps echoed behind them when no one walked. They said doors opened by themselves and cold hands brushed their shoulders when the wind was still. Some refused to stand watch alone after midnight. Others carried prayers in their pockets to keep their courage alive. I pass the old cells and feel eyes on me. Though I know no one is there, this is not imagination. It is history staring. Back the tower remembers every face that ever entered it, every cry, every secret. And in the silence you can almost hear them whisper. Not with anger, but with longing, as if they are afraid of being forgotten. The moonlight spills through a narrow window and falls on the stone floor. I see dust rise and twist like smoke, and for a heartbeat I think it forms a shape. A woman, maybe a child, maybe nothing at all. But I cannot move. I can only feel the weight of 1,000 years pressing against my chest, and I realize the watchers are not ghosts. They are memories waiting for someone to listen. When I step outside, the air feels lighter, but my heart stays heavy. This place does not let you leave untouched. Once you have seen the silence, you carry it with you. There was a time when this tower burned with faith, when men and women died not for gold or power, but for what they believed in during the reign of the Tudors and the Stuarts. The tower became a furnace for heresy. I walk into the room once used as a chapel. The walls cracked and the air dry with dust. Here they kept those accused of believing wrongly. Priests, scholars, rebels of the mind. Some were burned at the stake, others starved until faith turned to madness. I close my eyes and can almost hear the prayers still echoing low and desperate. O Lord, deliver us from fear. Faith was their crime. Silence was their punishment, yet even silence could not break them. They left behind verses scratched into stone, Latin words, fading but still defiant, hope written against despair. When I open my eyes, the sunlight cuts through the narrow window. The dust glows like tiny stars, and for a second the room feels holy again. Not because of religion, but because of courage. Those who died here turned pain into meaning, and that meaning still breathes in the air. Every empire needs martyrs to remind it that power is never eternal. The tower took their bodies, but their faith still rises with every dawn. There are stories. The guides do not tell stories too old and too strange, even for tourists. They say that during the Great Wars, when bombs fell over London, soldiers who guarded the tower saw figures moving through smoke shapes of armor, glinting in the firelight. Soldier wrote in his diary that he saw a man in a long cloak walking near the gate holding a lantern that gave no light. When he followed the figure, it vanished into the wall. Another said he heard music faint and distant like a royal procession, though the courtyard was empty. I wander the same grounds now and feel the air shift each time the wind passes through the gate. The smell of old stone mixes with something colder, like rain and ash. Sometimes I think the tower gathers the memories of every war, every death, every grief. And when the city bleeds, the tower bleeds too. People call these tales superstition, but I think they are something else. They are reminders that history never dies. It only hides the shadows, return not to frighten us, but to remind us of what we forget. Every nation builds monuments to its glory, but the tower stands as a monument to its guilt. When I leave the courtyard, I look back once more. The sky is red with sunset. The tower stands silent and unshaken, and I know that even in fire, even in ruin, its silence will always return. Centuries have passed since the tower last heard the cry of a prisoner. Now it stands as a museum filled with voices of visitors and guides and the flash of phones, but when you walk alone through its passages, the air still feels unchanged. Time has moved on, but the stones remain loyal to memory. I come here again after dark during the late tour. The guard tells stories of haunted rooms and laughing ghosts. But I do not laugh. This place does not feel like a joke. I stop near the Traitors' Gate where water once carried boats filled with prisoners. Now it carries reflections of light, but I can still sense the weight of despair hanging above it. Tourists come and go every day. They take pictures of the crown jewels. They smile for their videos, but few notice the silence between the walls. It waits quietly, patient the same way it waited for centuries. Even the guides lower their voices here, as if afraid to wake the tower from its long sleep. I touch the iron bars that once closed on the guilty and the innocent alike, and I feel a vibration, not sound, but memory. It is as if the tower itself remembers me, remembers everyone who ever looked at it with fear or fascination. It no longer kills, yet it still holds power. The power of remembrance, the kind that never fades no matter how bright the city around it becomes. As I walk out into the open air, I realize the tower is no longer a prison for people. It is a prison for history itself, and maybe that is what keeps it alive. They say the ghosts of the tower are restless. I believe they are not spirits trapped in stone, but memories that refuse to be forgotten at night. The stories return in the form of whispers, the cry of a queen, the prayer of a prisoner, the laughter of two lost princes. They are not haunting us. They are reminding us. I walk through the courtyard, and the air feels like it breathes, each gust of wind carrying a voice of the past, sometimes faint, sometimes clear, a woman calling for mercy, a man repeating his confession over and over. I close my eyes and the darkness turns alive. It feels like standing inside a living memory. The mind plays tricks, or maybe the tower does. Either way, I can feel them around me, not threatening, not cruel, simply present. They want to be remembered. They want their silence to mean something. When dawn breaks and the sun touches the walls, the feeling fades. The ghosts hide once more inside the stones, but I know they never truly leave. They are part of the structure, part of the rhythm of the city itself. We live among their shadows every day, pretending not to hear, but deep down every Londoner knows. The tower watches. Still. Morning light touches the Thames and the tower glows pale gold. I stand across the river and watch the reflection ripple like the beating of an old heart. The world has changed. Kings have fallen. Empires have turned to dust. Yet the tower remains the same, silent, patient, eternal. I think about all who walked within those walls. Rulers and prisoners, guards and ghosts, all part of one endless story. The story of power and the silence it creates. We build walls to protect ourselves, but in the end those same walls hold us captive. The Tower of Silence was never built to keep enemies out. It was built to keep truth inside. As I walk away, I feel a strange peace. The air still cold but lighter than before. The voices have quieted, not gone but resting for now. Maybe the tower does not want to scare us. Maybe it only wants us to remember. I turn once more and look back at the tall gray walls. They stand against the morning sky, proud and still. I know I will hear their silence again someday, because the tower does not belong to the past. It belongs to everything we choose to forget. History never dies, it only whispers, waiting for those who dare to listen. I came here searching for ghosts, but I leave knowing the real ghost is memory itself, and it will always live within the Tower of Silence.